You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Authentication factors form the foundation of how we verify identity in digital systems, and they go beyond just passwords or codes. At the deepest level, factors are grouped into categories that represent different ways of proving identity. Something you know, something you have, something you are, and increasingly, where or what you do. Something you know includes knowledge-based items such as passwords, personal identification numbers, or answers to security questions. Something you have refers to possession of a device or token, like a smartphone running an authenticator app or a hardware security key. Something you are relies on biometric traits such as fingerprints, voice recognition, or facial scans. Finally, where or what you do incorporates behavioral and contextual signals, things like typing patterns, mouse movements, geolocation, or time of day. While the first three categories have been used for decades, behavioral and contextual factors are becoming more prominent as supplemental checks that can strengthen security without creating friction. Understanding these categories is the starting point for grasping modern multi-factor authentication. Each factor type has unique security properties that determine its strength and limitations. Revocability is one property, how easily a factor can be replaced if compromised. Passwords and tokens can be revoked and reset, but biometric traits like fingerprints cannot be changed if stolen. Replay resistance is another important property. A factor should not be easily reused by attackers. For instance, hardware-backed keys generate unique challenges that resist replay attacks, while simple codes can often be copied and used. Spoof resistance addresses how hard it is to fake or impersonate a factor. For example, strong facial recognition with liveness detection is harder to spoof than a static photo, whereas SMS codes are easy to hijack via SIM swapping. Evaluating these properties helps organizations decide which factors are suitable for high-risk accounts versus lower-stakes applications. A strong MFA program layers factors that complement each other's weaknesses, ensuring resilience against many different attack types. Time-based one-time passwords, or TOTP, remain one of the most widely deployed MFA methods. They work by generating a temporary numeric code every 30 seconds, usually through an authenticator app on a smartphone. During login, the user types the current code along with their password, and the server verifies it against its own calculation of the expected code. TOTP is easy to deploy, relatively inexpensive, and far stronger than relying on passwords alone. However, it has limitations. Users can still be tricked into providing their code to a phishing site, which can relay it to the real system in real time. Additionally, if the time on the user's device drifts, codes may fail, leading to frustration. Despite these drawbacks, TOTP remains a popular step up from basic passwords because it balances usability and security. Still, organizations increasingly view it as a transitional solution, preferring stronger phishing-resistant options for their most sensitive accounts. For beginners, it is like a padlock, better than nothing, but not invulnerable. Push-based authentication is another widely used MFA method, offering convenience by sending a notification to a user's registered device. Instead of typing a code, the user simply taps Approve or Deny. This streamlines the login process and reduces errors caused by manual entry. However, it comes with unique risks. Attackers can exploit what is known as push fatigue or prompt bombing. In this attack, the adversary floods the target with repeated push requests, hoping the user will eventually approve one out of annoyance or confusion. In some cases, users may approve just to stop the notifications or assume it is a system glitch. This undermines the strength of push-based MFA. To counter this, organizations implement safeguards such as challenge response prompts, where users must enter a number displayed on the login screen into their authenticator app, making accidental approval much harder. Push MFA sits at the intersection of usability and risk, and its success depends heavily on user education and technical guardrails. Hardware tokens, such as Universal Second Factor, U2F keys, FIDO2 devices, and smart cards, represent some of the strongest authentication factors available today. Unlike software-based methods, hardware tokens store cryptographic keys and secure chips that cannot easily be copied. When used, they generate a cryptographic response that proves possession of the device without ever exposing the private key. This process includes attestation, where the token provides evidence of its integrity and provenance, allowing the server to confirm it is a genuine, untampered device. The benefits are substantial. Hardware tokens resist phishing, replay, and cloning, making them highly effective for securing high-value accounts such as administrators, developers, or executives. The downsides include cost, distribution logistics, and the risk of physical loss. Still, for environments that demand the highest levels of assurance, hardware-backed MFA is increasingly seen as the gold standard. They embody the idea of trust anchored in hardware, raising the difficulty bar far beyond what attackers expect with passwords or codes. Biometric factors add another dimension to MFA by leveraging traits that are unique to each individual. Fingerprints, facial scans, voice recognition, and even iris patterns are examples of inherence factors. Their primary strength lies in convenience. Users carry their biometrics with them naturally, and they cannot be forgotten like a password or lost like a token. However, biometrics raise significant privacy considerations. Storing biometric templates securely is critical because, unlike a password, you cannot change your fingerprint if it is stolen. Best practice involves storing templates locally on a trusted device, such as in a secure enclave or trusted platform module, rather than sending them to remote servers. Local matching reduces the risk of mass compromise and increases user trust. Another consideration is accuracy. False positives or false negatives can frustrate users or, worse, allow unauthorized access. Biometric MFA can be powerful, but it must be deployed carefully with privacy and reliability front of mind. Device-bound keys and platform authenticators build on the strengths of hardware-backed methods. Many modern devices include secure components such as trusted platform modules or TPMs, or secure enclaves in smartphones. These hardware elements generate and protect cryptographic keys that are tied directly to the device. When used for MFA, they can prove not only that the user has a factor, but also that it is originating from a specific, trusted device. This dramatically increases assurance because credentials cannot be exported or reused on another machine. For example, Windows Hello and Apple Face ID leverage device-bound authenticators to provide seamless, secure login experiences. For organizations, device-bound MFA offers both high security and user convenience. It shifts authentication away from fragile, portable secrets and toward hardware-rooted trust anchored in devices already in users' hands. As enterprises adopt passwordless strategies, device-bound authenticators are becoming central to how modern MFA is implemented at scale. Behavioral signals are often used as supplemental MFA factors, adding context without requiring explicit user action. These signals include typing rhythm, mouse movement patterns, geolocation, or even how a person holds their smartphone. While these behaviors are not reliable enough to stand alone as primary factors, they add useful layers of defense when combined with stronger ones. For example, if a login attempt comes from the correct username and password, but the typing pattern does not match the user's usual rhythm, the system may trigger step-up MFA. Behavioral signals excel at providing continuous authentication, validating identity silently throughout a session rather than only at login. This helps detect account takeover attempts in real time. The challenge is balancing privacy with security. Collecting too much behavioral data may raise concerns about surveillance, so organizations must implement these systems carefully. Still, when used responsibly, behavioral MFA strengthens security invisibly, making attacks harder without adding friction for the user. Fallback factor design is critical because users inevitably lose devices, tokens, or access to their biometrics. Without a secure fallback, MFA can backfire, locking out legitimate users. Recovery codes are one solution. Long, randomly generated codes provided during enrollment that can be used if other factors fail. These must be stored securely, ideally in password managers or physical safes. Secondary hardware, such as backup tokens or keys, is another option. Some organizations even allow human verification, such as contacting a help desk, but this must be safeguarded to avoid social engineering attacks. A secure fallback strategy balances continuity and security. If it is too easy, attackers may exploit it as a backdoor. If it is too strict, users may be unable to work. Designing fallback carefully ensures MFA remains resilient under real-world conditions, where loss and failure are inevitable. Evaluating which factors to deploy involves weighing multiple criteria. Cost is often the most visible. Hardware tokens may be expensive compared to app-based codes. Usability matters because if factors are too cumbersome, users may resist or find insecure workarounds. Deployability considers whether the method works across all platforms, devices, and user groups. Finally, attack resistance looks at how well the factor stands up to phishing, replay, or theft. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, encourages evaluating MFA factors holistically rather than focusing on one property alone. For example, a factor may be highly resistant to attack, but too expensive or impractical for broad rollout. Conversely, a factor may be cheap and easy but dangerously weak. The best MFA strategies involve tiered deployments, applying the strongest factors to the highest value users while balancing cost and convenience for the broader workforce. A practical exercise helps solidify these ideas. Imagine an organization inventories its MFA usage across 10 critical applications. They discover that half rely on SMS codes, while others use authenticator apps or push notifications. The first step is identifying the weak link, SMS factors. The next step is prioritization. Which applications are most critical or most exposed to external risk? In this case, 3 admin-facing applications are chosen as the top priority. The organization plans to replace SMS with stronger options, such as TOTP codes, hardened push notifications, or ideally FIDO2 hardware-backed keys. This gradual replacement strengthens defenses where it matters most without overwhelming resources. For learners, the key takeaway is that MFA programs are not static, they evolve. By continuously inventorying, identifying weaknesses, and upgrading, organizations ensure authentication keeps pace with threats. Security is a journey, not a one-time checklist, and MFA must be treated as an ongoing program of improvement. Attestation of authenticators is an advanced feature that strengthens trust during enrollment. When a user registers a new device, the system can request cryptographic proof that the authenticator is genuine and unmodified. This is particularly important for hardware keys, smart cards, and device-bound authenticators. For example, a FIDO2 key can provide an attestation certificate showing its origin and manufacturer, ensuring it was not tampered with or cloned. Attestation allows administrators to enforce policies, such as only allowing approved vendors or certain models of tokens to be enrolled. Without it, attackers could introduce malicious or counterfeit devices into the authentication ecosystem. For beginners, it is useful to think of attestation like the hologram seal on an ID card. It is not the primary identity check itself, but it proves the ID card is legitimate and issued by a trusted authority. By leveraging attestation, organizations ensure that the roots of their MFA system are anchored in integrity, preventing weak or fraudulent devices from weakening the whole program. Lifecycle management of MFA factors is often overlooked, yet it is just as important as their initial deployment. Factors go through predictable stages: issuance, replacement, revocation, and recovery. At issuance, organizations must verify identity and assign the factor securely. Replacement occurs when devices are lost, broken, or upgraded. Revocation is necessary when compromise is suspected, ensuring stolen or obsolete factors cannot be misused. Recovery addresses the inevitable situations where users are locked out due to lost or expired factors. Each stage requires policies, workflows, and automation to reduce errors. For example, replacing a hardware key should trigger automatic revocation of the old one, not leave it lingering as a potential backdoor. Lifecycle management ensures that MFA remains fresh, accurate, and aligned with current realities. Without it, organizations risk accumulating orphaned factors, which are dangerous because they extend invisible trust to devices no longer controlled by legitimate users. Proper lifecycle management makes MFA sustainable long-term. Biometrics present unique privacy challenges that demand careful handling. Unlike passwords or tokens, biometric traits cannot be reset if stolen. This makes protecting stored templates a top priority. Privacy-preserving designs focus on local storage, where biometric data never leaves the device. For example, Apple's Face ID and Microsoft's Windows Hello store biometric templates in secure enclaves or TPM chips, ensuring they are never transmitted to servers. Remote storage of biometrics is much riskier since a breach could compromise millions of users permanently. Privacy concerns also extend to how biometric data is used beyond authentication. Organizations must ensure biometrics are not repurposed for tracking or surveillance. For compliance, transparency with users is essential. They should understand how their biometric data is stored, protected, and used. For learners, it is helpful to view biometrics not as a silver bullet but as a sensitive tool that requires strict safeguards. Done right, biometrics can strengthen MFA. Done poorly, they can create lasting harm. Push notification methods can also be hardened against abuse. Simple approve or deny prompts are too vulnerable to prompt bombing, where attackers flood users with requests until one is approved. Hardened push MFA includes challenge context, such as requiring the user to enter a number displayed on the login screen into the app. This forces a mental match and makes blind approval nearly impossible. Device binding further strengthens push notifications by linking them to specific trusted devices, ensuring that only registered devices can approve. Limiting auto-approve features and setting thresholds for repeated requests prevents fatigue. These improvements turn push notifications from a convenience feature into a resilient factor. While hardened push MFA still requires user awareness, these safeguards make it much less likely that attackers can exploit human error. For organizations, upgrading push authentication is an important step in evolving from convenience-focused MFA toward resilience-focused MFA, while still keeping the process user-friendly. Operational monitoring is essential for spotting MFA factor abuse. Indicators include sudden spikes in enrollment, which may suggest attackers are enrolling rogue devices, or unusual patterns of factor usage, such as a shift from hardware tokens to SMS codes. Multiple failed attempts can indicate brute force or phishing campaigns. Even push MFA attempts can reveal abuse if requests suddenly increase in volume. Monitoring provides the visibility needed to respond before incidents escalate. Without it, organizations risk treating MFA as a static barrier when in fact it must be actively defended. Security teams should build dashboards that track enrollment trends, failure rates, and overrides, providing early warning signals. Automated alerts allow quick investigation and remediation. Just as monitoring network traffic reveals intrusions, monitoring MFA events reveals attempts to bypass identity protections. By integrating MFA monitoring with broader security operations, organizations create a unified picture of identity threats across their environment. Multimodal MFA refers to combining different factors for flexibility and assurance. Instead of offering only one option, organizations may allow users to choose between authenticator apps, hardware tokens, or biometrics, depending on context. Multimodal systems can also require multiple factors at once for particularly sensitive actions, layering assurance. For example, a system could require both a FIDO2 key and a fingerprint to authorize a wire transfer. This balances usability. Users can select convenient factors in normal situations. With assurance, high-risk actions demand more rigorous checks. Multimodal MFA is especially useful in diverse organizations where one method may not suit all employees. It also provides resilience. If one factor type is compromised, others remain available. For learners, it helps to think of this as having multiple locks on a door, some of which may be optional for everyday use but required together when protecting valuables. Multimodal MFA ensures that security adapts dynamically to risk and user needs. Relying on third-party authenticators and attestation services introduces vendor risk. If the external provider suffers an outage, is compromised, or discontinues support, the organization may lose critical authentication capabilities. This makes vendor due diligence essential. Organizations must assess providers, security practices, reliability, and compliance. Contracts should specify uptime guarantees, data handling policies, and breach notification timelines. For highly sensitive environments, relying on internal or hybrid solutions may reduce exposure. Vendor dependency also raises interoperability concerns, since not all authenticators integrate smoothly with every identity provider. To mitigate risk, organizations often diversify by supporting multiple authenticator options, avoiding lock-in. Vendor risk does not mean third-party services are unsafe. They often provide excellent security, but it does mean organizations must prepare contingency plans. Treating vendor trust as part of the MFA threat model ensures authentication remains resilient, even when dependencies extend outside organizational boundaries. Testing and pilot programs are vital for successful factor rollouts. Before deploying new MFA methods organization-wide, small groups should pilot them to identify usability issues, compatibility problems, and unexpected failure points. For example, a pilot might reveal that certain hardware tokens do not work with older laptops, or that employees struggle with installing authenticator apps. Pilots allow policies and instructions to be refined before full deployment. Continuous monitoring during the pilot phase provides feedback on adoption rates, failure patterns, and help desk load. Staged rollouts expand deployment gradually, avoiding mass disruptions. Rollback plans ensure organizations can revert changes quickly if problems arise. Without pilots, organizations risk rolling out MFA methods that frustrate users or fail technically, leading to rejection. Testing is not just about confirming functionality, it is about building confidence and smoothing adoption. A successful pilot creates momentum and demonstrates value, increasing user trust in the MFA program overall. Help desk teams are often the unsung heroes of MFA programs. They handle recovery requests, factor replacement workflows, and user questions. Training them securely is critical. If help desk staff reset MFA too easily, attackers may exploit social engineering to bypass protections. Conversely, if procedures are too strict, legitimate users may experience unnecessary downtime. Training should include verifying identity through multiple channels, following scripts that resist manipulation, and escalating suspicious cases to security teams. Automating some workflows reduces human error, but help desks will always be the human face of MFA recovery. Properly trained staff can act as a security control rather than a weak point. For learners, it is helpful to think of the help desk as both a support function and a gatekeeper. Their job is not only to help users, but to protect the integrity of the MFA system against manipulation. Investing in their training pays dividends in both user satisfaction and security resilience. Key performance indicators, or KPIs, provide the feedback loop that keeps MFA programs effective. Common KPIs include the percentage of accounts protected by MFA, the rate of failed MFA attempts, and the volume of recovery requests. High failure rates may indicate usability problems or attack activity. A large number of recovery requests may signal that factors are being lost too frequently or that onboarding needs improvement. Tracking these metrics over time helps organizations identify trends, justify investments, and demonstrate compliance to regulators or auditors. Without KPIs, it is difficult to know whether MFA is working as intended or where improvements are needed. With them, organizations gain visibility into both strengths and weaknesses, enabling continuous refinement. MFA is not a one-time deployment but a living program, and KPIs provide the measurements needed to guide its growth and maturity effectively. In the end, selecting MFA factors is a balancing act between usability, platform support, and threat models. No single method fits every situation. For highest-value users such as administrators or executives, phishing-resistant and attestable factors like FIDO2 hardware keys should be prioritized. For general users, flexible options like Authenticator apps or push notifications may provide the best balance. Legacy methods like SMS should be phased out, but fallback factors such as recovery codes and backup hardware must still be provided. The right mix depends on user demographics, organizational risk appetite, and regulatory obligations. The common thread is that MFA must evolve continually, strengthening as threats change. Organizations that treat factor selection as an ongoing process rather than a one-time choice build stronger, more adaptable defenses. Ultimately, MFA is not just about adding layers. It is about building trust in digital identities through thoughtful, resilient factor design. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.